All right. Hello, everyone. This is the CircuitPython weekly meeting for January 21st, 2025. It's Tuesday because yesterday was a U.S. holiday, so we delayed the meeting by one day. Next week, the meeting will again be on Monday, and we'll talk about that at the end. So welcome, everyone. I'll just note that this meeting is recorded. We record audio from the Discord CircuitPython voice channel and record a video of what's going on in the CircuitPython dev text channel. If you would rather not have your voice recorded, you are still welcome to participate by text. We upload the video of this meeting to YouTube, and we release the audio as a podcast. Please tell us if it is not available on your favorite podcast service. I'll explain things as I go along about which section is which, but we'll proceed shortly. So let me introduce myself. I'm Dan, and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers. CircuitPython development is primarily sponsored by Adafruit, so if you want to support Adafruit and CircuitPython, consider purchasing hardware from Adafruit.com. As I mentioned, this meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join the server anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. Typically, the meeting happens on Mondays at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Except when it's a holiday like it is today. So we'll talk about next week's meeting at the end when we wrap up. There's a shared notes document. Right now it's a Google Doc that accompanies the meeting and recording. You can contribute to this document beforehand. The final notes document includes timestamps to go along with the video, so you can use the doc to skip around and view the parts of the video that interest you most. The meeting tends to run 30 to 60 minutes. After each meeting, we post a link for the next meeting's notes document to the CircuitPython dev channel on the Adafruit Discord. Check the pinned messages to find the latest notes doc so you can add your notes for the following meeting. If you wish to participate but cannot attend, you can always leave hug reports and status updates in the document for us to read out during the meeting. So we'll start out with the first section, which is community news, which is kind of a look at all things CircuitPython and Python and hardware in the community. And it's chosen from a list of a set of many items that is in our weekly Python and microcontrollers newsletter done by Anne. This is just sort of the most things that are most relevant to CircuitPython. So let me take a timestamp. Let me guess at a timestamp for when I started talking about community news, and now next timestamp. So CircuitPython 2025 wraps up. Scott Shawcroft thanks the 16 folks who wrote about CircuitPython 2025. He states, "It was a great mix of detailed suggestions and big news around who will be working on CircuitPython. It'll be an exciting year, and we're happy to have you all participating." And there's a link to the Adafruit blog with a list of all the items which come from a variety of sources, but you can read everyone's contributions. Next up, LVGL has been ported to MicroPython. Keith Mukai notes on X that Kevin Schlosser has LVGL working on the latest MicroPython, and it runs just fine on ESP32S3. See the software. There's a link to GitHub. This I find very interesting because LVGL might eventually be a base for display I/O in certain cases, and or it could be used by itself. So we don't have immediate plans for this, but it's very interesting to have a working hardware graphics software base available. And then finally, another note from the newsletter, CircuitPython 9.2.3 has been released. It's the latest bug fix revision of CircuitPython and is a new stable release. See the Adafruit blog and the release notes in GitHub. The highlights of this release are that there was a fix for an ESP32S3 regression. Sometimes ESP32 S3 boards did not connect properly to USB without an interposed USB hub. And there are some new boards, 2 Adafruit Sparkle Motion boards, and the M5 Stack Stamp S3. So, as I mentioned, the items in this community news come from the Python and Microcontrollers weekly newsletter, which is a CircuitPython community-run newsletter and emailed every Monday. Complete archives are available at a link in the notes. It highlights the latest Python on hardware-related news from around the web, including CircuitPython, Python, and MicroPython developments. To contribute your own news or project, edit next week's draft on GitHub of the newsletter and submit a pull request, or just email cpnews@adafruit.com, or tag a post with hashtag CircuitPython on Mastodon, Blue Sky, or X. We check all those places. All right. Next up is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. This section is a quantitative overview of the entire project. It gives us a chance to look at the health of the project separate from our status updates. We'll talk about the project overall and then separately discuss the CircuitPython core, libraries, and Blinka. So first up, overall, in the past week, there were 38 pull requests merged by 15 authors. Some people I haven't seen a lot of or have only started recently contributing include Apple Cuckoo, Snaky Maker Cat, who is very active in Discord but hasn't submitted so many pull requests, NCGUK, Stella's Fun, and there were also 9 reviewers of those 38 pull requests merged, and there were 24 issues closed by 10 people and 17 opened by 14 people. So next up, we'll discuss the CircuitPython core itself. And Scott, could you read that?
Totally. Yep. Thanks, Dan. So for the core, we had 10 pull requests merged from 9 different authors. So thanks to all of those folks. We had 3 reviewers. We have 22 open pull requests, so we're comfortably under the goal of staying under a single page of 25 pull requests. Issues-wise, we had 12 closed issues by 6 people, 5 open by 4 people, for a total of 781 open issues. We're also net down 7, which is awesome. We keep track of our prioritization for Adafruit-funded folks via the milestone system. So we have 7 active milestones. We have 15 open issues for 10.0, 8 open issues for 9.2x, 51 open for 9xx. And then 649 in long term. So the priorities for us, I think Dan's working primarily in the 9.2x bucket, and then the 10.0 is kind of where I'm at bucket with my Zephyr work. So, and we're keeping up with issues coming in because there's only 1 left to triage. So that's probably already been triaged since these stats were taken. So all things are good in the core.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Okay, next up we'll talk about libraries, CircuitPython libraries. And Tim, could you read that section?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This section covers all of the CircuitPython libraries. All of the Adafruit libraries can be found on GitHub under names like Adafruit_CircuitPython_, then the name of whatever library it is. We have currently 348 Adafruit libraries in the bundles and 149 libraries in the community bundle, which makes a total of 497 total libraries right now. In the past 7 days, we had 24 pull requests merged. And from those, we had 6 different authors. And the names on here that were newer or less familiar to me in the libraries this week were Apple Cuckoo, Yako Bucci, and NCGUK. And thanks to those folks, as well as some of the other names here, who I do see a little bit more frequently on this list. We had 7 reviewers for the PRs this week. Thank you to our reviewers, Dan, myself, Lady Ada, Tektrick, Niradoc, Anecdata, and Scott. Thanks for doing some reviews this week to all of you. Of the pull requests that were merged, the oldest one was getting up there at 326 days. And there was also one just over 100 days, and then there were several down that were a week or less in terms of age. That leaves us at the end of the week with 60 open pull requests. The oldest one of those is a draft that's at 887 days currently, and there are some new PRs that are at 1 day as well on the new side. And over the past 7 days, we had 9 issues closed by 6 people, with 7 new issues opened up by 7 people. That leaves us with 683 open issues, and there are currently just 3 of those that are labeled as good first issue. But you can find those as well as all the others listed out at circuitpython.org/contributing, which is a website where you should head if you want to get involved in CircuitPython, particularly on the development side of things, helping us actually develop the core or the libraries. On that page, again, circuitpython.org/contributing. You'll find at first, by default, when you open the page, a list of all the open PRs, which is where we tend to point folks first. If you want to get involved, is to find an open PR and kind of go through the process of reviewing that. So when you load that page and look through the list, try to find something that you are interested in, or you have the hardware for, or that you know a little bit about. Click through to GitHub. And then, take a look at what the change in that PR is, download it locally. If you do have the hardware, try it out on the hardware, look over the actual changes in the code for spelling, syntax, logic, and anything else. Leave a comment there on GitHub letting us know what you found when you looked it over. If you were able to try it out on hardware, let us know how that went there in the comment as well. If you get comfortable with doing that on a couple of different PRs, we can also get you leveled up to leave official reviews on GitHub if that's something you'd like to do. And then if you would like to get more into the kind of coding side of things, the other thing you can do is on circuitpython.org/contributing. At the top, there is a couple navigation links. You can click over to the issues side, which is a similar list of links to GitHub, but these ones represent issues which do not already have a proposed change. So these are waiting for someone to come along who's willing to work on either fixing a bug or adding a new feature or some enhancement to the library or whatever it may be. So this is another good place to look if you are getting started, getting involved with CircuitPython. You can look again through the list for something that's either interesting to you or that you've got the hardware for. Click through, but this time there will be just an issue there, and it will be up to you to actually try to code up some solution to that issue, be it a fix for the bug or a new feature or whatever, and then submit your own PR with that proposed change. We do have a guide for submitting contributions using Git and GitHub. So if you've never done that before, we can help you get through that. We also have folks who are around throughout the week on Discord who are more than willing to help you get spun up with any of this stuff. So if you have trouble, be it with version control or pre-commit or pylint or black formatting or anything else really that we use as part of our standard process, please come say hi on Discord. Let us know what you're doing. And let us know what trouble you're having, and there will be folks who are more than happy to help you out. The updated libraries in the last 7 days, I won't list. Essentially, all the libraries were updated with a patch, but I will call out over in the community bundle. Looks like we had an update to the CircuitPython multi-KE library by Neradoc, so check that out if you're interested there. And that's what we have for libraries. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Tim. Okay. Next up, we'll talk about Blinka. Blinka is our compatibility layer for CircuitPython on single-board computers like Raspberry Pi. So you can run CircuitPython code under regular Python. That's really what we're talking about. So in the past week in Blinka, 4 pull requests were merged by 3 authors. There were 4 reviewers. There are now 18 pull requests. There's a few that are very old, but there are a bunch that are pretty recent, and we'll take a look at those. There have been 3 closed issues by 2 people and 5 opened by 4 people. Right now, there are 123 open issues in Blinka-related repos, and that in the past month, there have been about 19,000 PyWheels downloads, and currently we support 146 single-board computers under Blinka. So that's great. Okay. Next up is Hug Reports, which is a chance to highlight folks in the CircuitPython community and beyond for doing awesome things. I'll start, and then we'll go down the list of notes alphabetically. If you are text only or missing the meeting, I'll read your notes when I get to them in the list. So for this week, I'd like to thank TAC, GitHub username HATHACH, for diagnosing and fixing 2 USB-related bugs that were regressions for CircuitPython. TAC is our a full-time TinyUSB. He's the originator of TinyUSB, and he works on TinyUSB for Adafruit. Next up is C. Grover, who says, I'd like to thank DJ Devon 3 for continuing investigation of openweathermap.org alternatives, including providing useful guidance and excellent examples. And there's a link to the Feather Weather project. Next up is DJ Devon 3. In only a few months of absence, I forgot how to put a feather into the bootloader mode that ESP2 will recognize. Hugs to Neradoc and Dan H for helping me get back into the swing of things. Thanks to El Pekenin for helping to improve some F-string formatting in the timestamp function. Thanks to C. Grover for providing multiple choices to port away from open weather maps for weather data. His latest playground note on Weather Architecture 2.0 for AIO plus HTTP requests is an excellent read, and there's a link to that. And thanks to Dan H for fixing a bug in 922 and releasing a fix in 933. And now next up is Tim.
All right, thank you. This week, my hard reports thanks to Liz for helping me learn how to use pretty pins and also how to make the photos for the pinouts page that go into product guides. Thanks to Jeff for suggestions on improvements in Adafruit datetime library, as well as ideas for some tests over in the image load library. Thanks to Neradoc for reporting some issues with Blinka Display I/O, including some reproducers that made it very easy to look into. As well, also thanks to Neradoc for looking into getting the HTTP server library to work with ESP32 SPI. I think that will be really cool if we get the opportunity to use HTTP server back on ESP32 SPI-based stuff, so thanks for that. And lastly, thanks to Slaftos for adding the list and the rename arguments to Circup. List in particular is really nice because with newer Python in virtual environments, the way that you set up the tab completion for Circup is a bit more complex and a pain to do, so list makes it much easier to actually get a list of the examples rather than tab complete, which I think is really cool. So thanks to them. And that is what I've got. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And finally, we've got Scott for Hug Reports.
Hello. First, a hug to Andy Ross from Zephyr for helping me understand what my heap options are. Thank you to Bablock B for the RP2350 Sleep PR, even though it's a draft. And thank you to Semantis Fox for IMX RT CanIO pull request that I believe I merged in.
All right, thank you. All right. Our next major section is status updates, which is our time to tell folks what we're up to individually. So I'll start as before, and then we'll go through the list of status updates alphabetically. When I call on you, take a couple of minutes to talk about what you've been doing since the last meeting and what you'll be doing until the next meeting. If a discussion becomes too long for status updates, we can always move it to the In the Weeds section. So I'll start, and I'll just note, so I released CircuitPython 923 last week, or was it the week before? I can't even remember now. To add a workaround by TAC to fix the USB problem in ESP32S3 that I mentioned. So TAC was able to diagnose the underlying problem in ESP IDF. It was due to some recent changes in ESP IDF, and he made initial fixes in TinyUSB and TinyUF2. The Espressif developers are aware of the problem and plan to fix it shortly, they say. Another thing I did was I submitted a PR that's awaiting testing to fix Pico DVI crashing due to problems with DMA interrupts. And I'm awaiting some help on testing that because I'd like to get a simple test. And finally, I've decided to start working on the Nina FW firmware, which is used on, say, PyPortal and other things that use Airlift, ESP32 Wi-Fi coprocessors. We had an update for that, but it's been over a year and it's still in progress. And we really need the update so we can support ECDSA, that is elliptical cryptography certificate chains on ESP32 SPI. There are more and more websites that use these certificate chains, and we're not able to use them on our Airlift boards and breakouts. Okay, next up, I'll read DJ Devon 3. Oops. Who says, now that Open Weather Maps put their free API behind a credit card wall, I followed C. Grover's Playground Notes to update my Feather Weather project for weather to weather.gov. It works well, but you're limited to updates every 60 minutes. Then I found OpenMeteo's free weather API. Polling is limited to every 15 minutes, but it can be used with latitude and longitude for anywhere across the world, and it's completely free with no login required. I recommend everyone check out OpenMeteo's API request constructor. There's a link. It is the most efficient and pleasant API request builder I've ever come across so far. I wish every online API had something like that. If you've been wondering what to do for online weather data since Open Weather Maps pulled the rug out, OpenMeteo is an excellent replacement. TJ Devon also says, created a new repo for the Good Times BDF font that I use in my Feather Weather project. Use Font Forge to create sizes from 5 pixels to 121 pixels high. Updated my Feather Weather project and took Bitmap Saver screenshots of every page. Transition from CircuitPython 9.01 to 9.21 was seamless. Helped someone with a Matrix Portal S3 clock question and ended up writing an NTP example and a playground note for it. Okay, thank you, DJ Devon. All right, next up is Tim.
All right, last week I patched and released all the libraries for a new Sphinx read the docs configuration. Basically, they had a default configuration that they deprecated, and so we needed to add a line into our configuration moving forward. So that has been done. In sort of related, a different issue, but still kind of infrastructure-y in the weeds, I also fixed a couple of libraries which had incorrect links, incorrect URLs for their docs badge in the README file, which meant the badge that got shown on GitHub and the README was not working, but also it causes some other of the reports that Adabot tries to run to get broken as well. So that's been fixed, and I think all of those are good now. And I'll say, again, hug report to Slaftos, who actually uncovered those, looking into some of the stuff in Adabot. And the next thing I worked on was looking into some Blinka display I/O issues. I've submitted fixes for a few of them, and I still have some more to look into, as well as some testing to do on one that I opened a draft PR for. But it's been fun kind of diving into Blinka display I/O last couple of days. And then lastly, over the weekend, I figured out how to send a HTTP post to a Discord channel webhook from CircuitPython, and made a quick proof of concept that uses an accelerometer, which is a bit overkill, but it does work nicely to know when the dryer finishes, and then it sends a message to a Discord that my wife and I use to coordinate different stuff. So we get a nice reminder when the dryer is done, because ours doesn't have like an alarm or a beeper or anything. It just kind of finishes and turns off. So now we know. And that is what I've been up to. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, I'll read Jeff's away for a couple of days, and I'll read his contribution. Put some polish on the PIO Matter library for running RGB matrices on Pi 5 using PIO. This is released on GitHub and PyPy. And there's a link. Out today having a mini hack fest with some friends. We have been working on a variety of projects. No CircuitPython, though. And then finally, we've got Scott, round out status updates.
Hello, thank you. I fixed up Zephyr work so I can actually do a Blink example over CircuitPy on I forget which board, an NRF board, I think. So I have that working. I started working on Zephyr Wi-Fi on Friday. I was hoping to do it last week, but ran into things. So I'm working on getting Wi-Fi support for the NRF 7002, which then I will try on the ESP as well and see if it just works, which would be awesome. I have some tweaks to do for the build system there to detect header file changes. I started it, but I'm also generating all of the npconfig board.h's every time. So if I detect header file changes, I inadvertently rebuild pretty much everything. So I've got to fix that up, and I have some ideas on how to do that. I'm going to do that this week as well, or at least maybe next week. We'll see. And then on Thursday morning, I'm recording a stream with Robert Farnack, who's a YouTuber that does technical stuff. So I've got some examples there. I've got to clean my desk and get set up, but it should be cool. I'll host and show examples, and he'll ask me questions about CircuitPython. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you. All right. And finally, I just have sort of an announcement thing in the weeds. It's just about typing into the notes document. Scott converted the document to instead of using raw markdown in the document, if you just format the document, format what you're typing with regular Google Doc formatting, we can now convert that into markdown for publishing the notes document automatically. So don't feel you have to type regular markdown now. Just I've enabled markdown typing in the document. And so when you type something like, say, code in backticks, it'll turn into the right formatting. And then it converted back into markdown when we publish it. So hopefully this will be a little easier for everybody, and we'll see. And I'll put a note about that, even though it's not in the document right now. And now finally, we'll wrap up. And all I have to say is that the next meeting will be next Monday, January 27th at the regular time. And does anybody else have anything to add? Okie dokie. That is it for this week. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.